Alright guys, so welcome back to a new video in this series. So this video will be picking up off of where I left off in this one. I'll have a link down in the description in case you missed it. But I made this animation using Quick Magic, and then I show you how to clean it up inside of Unreal Engine. So I want to cover a few things here first. This is what you're going to be able to expect from the results that you get. So you'll see that I have made this so that you can approach the item from any direction, and he'll be able to somewhat pick it up and make hand contact. Now, the hand contact won't be perfect using this method, but the method that I show you in the beginning will be the method that you normally use for static objects that don't move. So these objects right here, because they're going to be simulating physics when they're dropped, they could be rotated like this, or they could be rotated like this, or they could be rotated any other direction like this. And so having him approach it from a very specific location kind of ends up making things a little awkward, which was pointed out to me by one of the users in the Discord. He brought that to my attention because he was asking a question about it, Smart Kool-Aid. So I spent probably about 6 hours beating my head against a wall because I'm not good at vector math, trying to figure this out. So at the end of this video, after I've showed you how to set it up as a static approach, where you have to approach it from this location right here, and you have to be looking in this direction right here. At the end of this video, I'll show you how to make it so that you can approach it from any direction as shown here. So like I said, when you approach it from any direction, you won't have perfect hand contact, but in my opinion, it doesn't really matter that much. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen a game where they always make perfect contact with the weapon. Games like PUBG, they don't even bother. They just have him kind of semi bend over, and then it just pops into his hand. So anyway, this is probably a more sophisticated approach than what you'll probably see in most video games, even AAAs. So just keep that in mind whenever I'm teaching this. Anyway, so you'll get another intro right after this one because I'm not going to go through and edit things professionally. I just don't do that if you've been following my videos. Now, I will tell you that if the gun is hovering in the air like this, obviously this isn't going to work. I'm not going to, for now, I'm not going to actually show how to use IK for proper hand contact. This doesn't use hand IK. It just uses vector math. So it assumes that the weapon is laying flat on the ground, as shown here. So if it's not laying flat on the ground, then it'll look like what it looked like here. But if you want to incorporate hand IK, you can, feel free to. I might even do a video later, not right now, but later I may do a video on setting up IK. I may come back to this and show how to set up IK because Contextual Animation Scenes actually do support IK. They do have built-in support for IK targets and stuff like that. But anyway, so I will see you in the next part of this video, which will be coming up right now. All right, guys. So I had started doing this video before, but I ran into a bunch of problems. So anyway, I'll explain the approach that I took to this. So one thing you'll notice is that right there, the contact wasn't actually perfect, and that's because I was actually rather close to the gun. Now, the rotation itself, the way that I'm handling the rotation is actually I'm just letting the movement component rotate it by setting the AI's focal point so that it's pointing in the correct direction. So if that's the caveat I was talking about. If he was watching the preview videos on the Discord that I released, if it's because I'm actually, and this is quite messy actually right now, but it'll be a lot cleaner whenever we set it up. So basically, I'm I'm disabling input. That's not really necessary, but I'm doing it as a safety precaution. I'm unpossessing the character. I'm setting his camera to be back on this camera because automatically Unreal Engine will disconnect the player controller's camera from this one. And so I don't actually want that. I actually want it to follow him as he's rotating. Over here, I create just a dummy AI controller. I have that possess it. Why do I do that? You might think, well, because I can set the focal point easily for one, and also that mitigates the need to actually manually rotate it, which presents quite a problem, to be honest. Um, this part right here isn't actually, wait, yeah, actually, I think that is necessary. This is some weird issue with the motion matching. He wants to start running in place after he stops. So this makes sure that, also the reason why I'm having an AI controller possess it is so that I can use the move to location. The simple move to for the player, it simply doesn't allow us to change the way that this stop on overlap handles things. By default, he'll stop on overlap, which will cause an amount of error in positioning. So I may, yeah, let me actually just bypass this, and I'll do a simple move to location here just to show you how that works. The problem is that if we did do that, then yeah. So what I'll do is I'll just set the actor's rotation, and this will be real snappy, but that's okay. Just ignore the fact that it snaps. I'm just doing this to show you the error that we get and positioning when we use the simple move to. That's not disconnected, so it shouldn't be throwing errors. And that's not connected. No, it's not. Okay, it should still work. No, okay, it doesn't. Weird. No, I not have it disconnected. I definitely do have it disconnected and bypassed. Okay, let's just do that. Okay, we just delete it. I don't know. That's a bug. That's obviously a bug. Oh, no, okay. I see what's going on. So it's because I have that using it. Sorry about that. So if I just do this, yeah, so it didn't actually move him, interestingly enough. Oh, yeah, it does. Okay. But it's not actually rotating him. Yeah. Um, let's try. And the reason why is because this is actually, yeah, and see, it's still not wanting to move him properly. I think it's because I need a delay here. So let's just add a 1 second delay, or let's make it 1.5 second delay. And what we'll do is we'll actually rotate the mesh. And this is kind of nuanced. I won't go into that right now, but it has to do with the way that they handle the movement, like component and stuff in here. But you see that error. So it will probably do it over here on this one as well. Yeah. So the reason why I played it twice is because I pressed it twice. Yeah, so you see the amount of error. Now, what's actually causing that? I believe it's either going to be the stop on overlap or it's going to be the acceptance radius. The simple move to location, it may actually have a built-in acceptance radius. I'm not 100% sure. So that may be something I'll have to look into. If anybody else knows, then let me know. But yeah, that's basically the reason why I did this the way that I did. And I was just wanting to inform you guys as to why I made the choices that I did. Now, I may end up having to come back here and look at some of this stuff. I know this is kind of somewhat of a mess. I'll try to make it a lot cleaner during the tutorial guide. So anyway, let me just make sure this still works properly now. Let me see. Yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure. Like I said, if you're too close to it, then it can't rotate them properly. And if it can't rotate them properly, then there will be some offset there. Uh, the best way I can think of to handle that for you guys is to actually you could actually make it so that they have to be like within a certain area in order to interact with it. For example, like you could make it. A lot of people do this. They make it so that you actually have to be looking at it. It has to be your mouse has to actually be, or your cursor actually has to be over it before you can pick it up. And if you did it that way, that would prevent the problem because it would make sure that that they would have to be far enough away from it in order for the move to have enough space to move and ensure that he's rotated properly. So I hope that makes sense. Now I'll just go ahead and explain to you how I'm actually moving it. So and this will differ depending on your setup and how things are handled. But in the motion matching setup, where he's looking actually determines where he rotates to while he's moving. Uh, so if I'm moving and I turn my mouse, you'll see that he turns to face in the direction that I'm looking. You see? So with the AI or the NPCs, their focal point actually determines where their cursor is. You can think of it as their cursor. So that focal point is actually where they're looking. And so what I'm doing here is I'm actually getting the rotation of the sync transform. And the reason why I didn't use the entry transform is because I think there's some amount of error with the entry transform. Um, I'm not 100% sure. I was kind of flip flopping back and forth between the two. Now the entry transform doesn't require any setup for you to use it. Uh, so what I might have been seeing, I may have been misinterpreting because I didn't realize that at first that if I was too close, that it simply wouldn't have enough movement to for the character to correct his rotation. which was fixed this way. Okay, yeah. So the entry transform, there's no error. It's just as accurate as the sync transform, which means we don't have to actually set up the sync transform. I'll discuss the sync transform though. Basically, what the sync transform is it's basically the warp target position. And if you come in here, if you create a warp target, it does require motion warping to be set up on your animation, but you have to remember though that motion you can actually motion warp things unless your animation has root motion. My animation does not have root motion, and therefore, um, because he has no root motion, I cannot motion warp into this animation, unfortunately. So that's something to keep in mind too. You could have a couple of steps leading into this animation. And if you did that, then you could motion match and you could motion warp at the same time. So that would give you a much better outcome. But if you do that, you want to keep it real short. Like maybe he moves from right here to right here. The problem is that if you can't actually motion warp into the beginning of the animation if it's like out here, for example, because you're going to walk over here and you're going to try to interact with this. So you would have to have your character walk all the way back here, and then you'd have to motion warp and motion match into it. You could still kind of achieve that, but you would need to make sure that he's that specific distance away beforehand, because there is a way to handle it in such a way, but it requires the distance to be approximately the same, which kind of makes motion warping a kind of edge case. So where it's kind of difficult to have him seamlessly like go from a running into the actual animation. This can be handled more easily on animations where they're actually standing in place like this, where they start from an idle. That makes it a lot easier because you can just redirect the character to walk over to this starting position, and like you could use the method that I used where it makes sure that he's also rotated in the correct direction. Also, if you notice some foot swimming right here, that's actually the game animation sample project responsible for that. So just keep that in mind. This is the preview anim instance that's causing that. I have the preview anim instance right here, which is why he's in. Well, it's not why he's in an idle. Yeah, actually it is, because you'll see he's not actually playing the animation. So he's actually supposed to be playing the animation, but there's a bug in here. See, now he's playing it. And you'll notice, yeah, it's still doing that. But that's, like I said, it's the game animation sample project that's responsible for that little bit of foot sliding, but you're probably not going to have the camera right up on his feet like that anyway. So anyway, yeah, I've already spent a lot of time discussing this. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we need to do, and I've already migrated this animation over into this new project. What you're going to do is you're going to go under animation. You're going to scroll down until you see contextual animation, and you're going to check that. It's going to say all this stuff, say yes, and then just restart. So this is a contextual animation scene asset right here. There's only two assets that you need: a contextual animation scene and a contextual animation role data asset, which only stores the roles that actors are going to be playing within the contextual animation scene. So you can think of a contextual animation scene as a choreographed act within a show, for example. So if somebody had if somebody was putting on a show at school or whatever, maybe you would have two or three acts or scenes or whatever. Maybe you'd have dozens of scenes. I don't know. I never did stuff like that in school, but um, anyway, all that stuff would be planned out ahead of time. You would rehearse it, all that, and so everybody would know where they needed to be, what they needed to do, what they needed to say, so on and so forth. Well, that's basically how contextual animation scenes work. So I'm going to create a new folder here, and I'm going to call it context anim scene, and I'm going to right click and go to animation, and you'll see contextual anim scene here. I'm going to call it CAS uh, pistol pickup. And then we need a role. So you could try to generically label this stuff and share this role data asset across all of your contextual animation scenes if you want. It's probably more appropriate to do it that way. Depending on the situation, you may need different roles. But anyway, so I don't think these data assets are really that big. So what you're going to do is you're going to create a data asset. And right up here at the top, you'll see contextual anim roles asset. You're going to select that. Ignore this one. You'll never make one of these. I don't even know why it shows up in here. But basically, this is that without its actual wrapper in place, which is why you would never want to actually create that. And so we'll call this CAR, and I'll just call it pistol pickup. I'm not going to go for like a generic naming convention. And I'll just call this pistol, and I'll call this player. And this is going to be a character. And so what we actually want to do is we actually want to make sure that this matches the character settings. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm doing this in my project. You don't have to do this in your project, guys. But anyway, it's actually going to make it a little bit more difficult doing it inside of here. But I decided to do it, at least for this one, I'm going to do it inside of here. Some of the other ones that I do, well, I probably won't do inside of here. And in all honesty, a pistol pickup is kind of a difficult one to do. I probably shouldn't have chosen this to do at the beginning, but of the series, but I did. I wasn't thinking straight when I selected this one. I just thought it'd be cool. So anyway, you're going to copy your capsule half height here, and you're going to come back over here. You're going to paste that here, and your capsule radius, you're going to copy and paste that here. So I don't believe we actually need to rotate that, but I'll discuss this mesh to component stuff later on. What we need to focus on now is browse back over here and open up this contextual animation scene, and we need to assign this role asset here. So you can just click and drag it, or you can select it and press the back button. It's up to you. You have to update the roles afterwards. It does not do that automatically. You need to select your primary role. Now, the primary role is always going to be the thing that something is interacting with. So, if you need a player to sneak up behind a NPC and stab them in the neck or choke them out or whatever, then that NPC is going to be the primary role, not the player. I know it sounds a little backwards, but that's how it works. If your player is going up and opening up a drawer, a cabinet, a window, a refrigerator, or whatever, or picking something up off the ground, those things that he's interacting with will be the primary role. The override preview data, this allows you to actually see what's going on in here. If you don't do this, you won't see crap inside of here. Unless it has an animation and you've added an animation on your track for it. So actually, let's just go ahead and do that first. So to do anything inside of here, you need to add a new anim set. And this actually creates a section for you. So you have to choose your section name, and that'll appear in this drop-down menu right here. So you can name it whatever you want. I'm going to call this bottom pistol pickup. And the reason why I'm doing bottom is because I'm actually picking it up from the bottom. I might actually say bottom L. So I'm picking it up from the bottom left, or you can think of it that the pistol is pointing to the left of when the player is looking down at it. So right here you have your data, and you don't have to actually fill this out right now. You can wait and fill it out later after you press OK. So you can set the movement mode, so you can change the movement mode of these things. If it's not upon, you don't have to worry about the movement mode. You can just say none or whatever, or just simply don't change it. You could, I guess, you could say optional for this one because it doesn't actually have an animation. But the optional, it might actually refer to the role itself within this context. So you may or may not want to do that. I probably wouldn't touch it simply because there's no tooltip here letting me know what the hell it actually means. So I can only guess what its purpose is. So I've not gone through the C++ for this to see if there's any tooltips in there that describe what they're for. But normally, if you don't see a tooltip when you move your mouse over, it probably means that there isn't one in C++ either, because those tooltips actually get drawn from the C++. But that also depends on how they comment them and stuff like that. So it could have a comment explaining it without there actually being a tooltip showing up in here, but it's hard for me to say. I don't mess around with C++ much. If you're using motion warping for an animation, then you need to change it to flying mode because motion warping is affected by gravity. For this one, it's just going to be walking. In actuality, I'm just going to shift right click that to copy that because I forgot to do this. I do it every time. So the first thing we actually need to do is we actually need to make an anim montage. And so now I'm going to go ahead and create this. And I want to shift left click to paste that back in here. And I'm going to select that pickup pistol Unreal montage. Now the random weight, I believe that is like in case you have several different anim sets and you want. So let me just explain this to you. So you have your different sections. Those different sections are like for different situations. For example, one section might be for getting in the car from the left. The other might from the driver door, for example. The other might be where you're getting in the car from the passenger door, and then you climb over the seat and get in the driver's seat. Kind of like how they handle it in GTA. Also, if you go and you look at the Matrix City demo, they do it like that in there. So one thing to note though is that you can actually add multiple anim sets under the same section. And so that's where this random weight comes in. If you have like 5 different animations in here for your player role, then you need a random weight that determines which one of those gets randomly chosen. Actually, I believe they have something like that set up in the Matrix City demo too, where there's different like animations it can choose from for getting in the car. I could be wrong. And then it randomly selects one of those every time that you get in the vehicle. But like I said, I could be wrong. I probably am. I may have seen that somewhere else. Maybe on the bench example that they were setting up. I don't think that was filled out though. I think those assets were blank. So it was probably the vehicle one. Anyway, so if I just say okay, if I come over here and I do this again, let's just say I do this. Oh, that wasn't a. So for one, I added that under a different section. Okay. So I'll go ahead and do this again. And so now you'll see that under this section, we have two indexes, index 0 and index 1. And one is for a hurdle low stand, and the other is for a hurdle high stand. Okay. And so that's where the random weight would come in. And I can delete that, and you'll see it goes back to only having one anim set for the player. And I can remove that anim set again, and now I don't have any for that player. In fact, that section disappeared because it no longer has any anim sets. So that's how you can also say remove section, and it'll just delete the entire section regardless of how many animations are in it. So once you're in a section, you'll notice that you have warp point definitions for each section. You have a name, and you have this sync animations checkbox. So this sync animation stuff, I'm not going to show you that in this one. This is just a kind of introductory to contextual animation scenes and how they work. So for this one, we're not going to have to actually worry about that. In fact, we could uncheck it and it's not going to make any difference. If you select an animation for a role on this timeline, then it'll show the selected anim track category where your animation is. You can change the max start time, the movement mode. You can set it to be optional or not. And then there's other stuff in here as well. So you have your selection criteria and your mesh to scene right here. So in the actual role asset, you have your mesh to component, but in here you have your mesh to scene. So your mesh to component is going to be its orientation to the component itself. Yeah, so that this would be how you reorient it relative to itself, its position in the scene. And then right here, this is how you would alter its position within the scene. I do believe that's how it works. I can tell you for sure, though, that the mesh to scene, it does reorient it inside of here. But this right here can be a little confusing, which is why it's a bit difficult for me to explain. So you'll see that we can't actually see him in here, but we need to actually add some override preview data. I'm going to set this to be the player. It's going to be an actor, and I'm going to say CBP, sandbox character, DAO. I'm going to select my character for this one. And this is going to be an actor too. It's going to be the pistol roll, and this is going to be the BP. Let's see, pistol. Oh, it's going to be the M9, the BP gun M9. Now, after you change this, it won't show up right away. You need to reset your scene. And also, this is buggy, guys. So you'll see that this character is actually sitting right in here. Let me see if I can figure out how to get it to sit right. It doesn't look like I'm going to be able to. Let me see. Nope. Okay, yeah. So by the way, the collision behavior, this is ignore channels, I believe, is active as long as this contextual animation scene has been started and it's running. So by default, it won't, if you, the way I'm setting it up in this example, guys, we're not actually going to be able to make use of this. So if you need to disable collision, you'll have to do it yourself. This is a soft introductory, and then in other videos, I'll go into more detail on making use of the stuff that's built into here, such as warp point definitions, collision behavior, IK target params, so on and so forth. So the IK target parameters can aid you in using IK to reach targets, like actually grab things and stuff like that. So I'll probably do a follow up video where I show you guys how to set up an IK target definition after we do the initial setup for this. Also, you have these attachment params. I'll go into detail on these as well. You can select a role and a socket name and a relative transform, which allows you to offset it or its locational rotation or even its scale. The radius itself, like I said, there's no tooltips in here. I do believe that this has to do with auto activation, which would fall under the selection criteria. You would need a selection criteria set up in order for the radius to have any effect. So yeah. Anyway, I'll go into this in another video. So it does look like maybe we might end up having to. I might end up having to redo this. So this is a bug, and I don't think there's any way to actually fix that. So I'm going to actually, let me see. Yeah, I'm going to actually delete that and make a new one. So I've added these, and you won't see anything yet because we haven't actually added an anim set. Hmm. Yeah, so it looks like it's still not going to actually show up in here, which is unfortunate. It does this sometimes, guys. This thing has a lot of bugs in it, so just let that be known. So after we get our animation in here, how do we actually make this work? So the way that we make this work is that we need access to the actual way we did this stuff in here. So it looks like when I copied this over, this didn't register. So what I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to come back over here to this other one where I originally made it. And I'm going to open up, well, if I can get this to, so this is a bug as well. You'll see that there's nothing actually showing up in here. So let me try this. Okay, it's still not showing up. Let's see. Okay. So what I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to close that and then reopen it. I wish I didn't have to do that, but I can't do anything about the 5 billion bugs inside of Unreal Engine 5. Unfortunately, they laid off a bunch of staff, and so the odds of bugs like that getting fixed is basically none. So don't be expecting stuff like that to get fixed anytime soon. So let's see. Now that I've got this back open, I should be able to access that if I can get this to load up. So now you'll see that stuff is pulling up. Like I said, it's a bug. Not much I can do about it. I'm going to open up the level sequencer that I created and I set this up in. As shown in the video, this is also a bug. It doesn't actually look like that, as you can see. And so what I actually want to do is I actually want to find out what the offset is of the item. And this is my offset right here, my rotational and my locational offset. I'm going to copy this rotational offset. And I'm going to come back over here to this. I'm going to open up I'm going to open up this. I'm going to go to the pistol, mesh to scene, and I want him to be rotated like he was in that other one. And so I'm going to reset the scene and you'll see he's rotated properly. Now I need this guy right here. I need his arrow to be pointing right. So what I need to do is add a 90-degree offset to him. And now what I'm actually going to do is, because this is something important that you need to note, the primary role should not be offset locationally. Um, Unfortunately, there's not much I can do about the rotation itself because of the way that I designed these pickup items. Unfortunately, so I'm going to add the locational offset to the player itself by selecting this and then adding that to the location. I'm just pasting it. And now you'll see that he's in the opposite direction. He's over here, but he needs to be over here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to invert these values. And now he's over there in the correct spot. So this is where he was in relation to the pistol inside of the scene whenever I was making the animation. And that's where we want him. Okay. So we want him to have the same offset. Now, granted, because in this game we have physics, so the pistol might be facing this direction or it might be facing this direction. Um, in other words, it might be this side might be on flat on the ground, or this side might be flat on the ground. We can't determine that. So what you would actually end up needing is two different animations, and then you'd have to determine which side it's on, and then you'd have to play the proper one for it. As far as rotated this way or rotated that way or offset this way or offset that way, you don't have to worry about that because the contextual animation scene will always make sure uh, that he's in the right spot. And so the reason why I kind of did this one first is because I thought it would be a good way to actually help you understand how contextual animation scenes work before we start setting up more complex ones. Um, that's the reason why I chose this one. Also, if you made the mistake like I did and you named your section default, you can always come over here. You can select your section and come over here to your active section, and you can actually rename it right here. I thought I named it that. And so now you'll see it has that name. So I'm not going to worry about that bug that's preventing him from actually showing up in here. Yeah. So I'm just going to ignore that. You know what you could do actually is you instead of doing the type actor, which is probably the reason why it's showing up like this, you could actually just do a skeletal mesh, and you could say UEFN, and then you could say. In fact, I think this is what I did in the other one. Now the problem with this is that it's actually going to be looking at the skeletal mesh itself, but that's okay because the skeletal mesh component within the actor should normally be facing the same direction as the actor. Now, the character itself may not be, uh, at least not in the motion matching system, because the motion matching counter rotates the root bone. Okay, so that's something you need to consider, which is what actually made this setup more complex than what it would have been in a normal animation with a normal animation system, because of the way that the offset root bone handles things. It kind of overcomplicated a lot of things. So you'll see now that he actually shows up in here like this. Um, Let me see. So if you take him out of the little capsule component, then you'll see now he's in the correct position. Now I don't know. Oh, this is the generic one. Sorry, guys. This needs to be the sandbox DAO. Okay, so now he looks proper. He is floating a little bit, but that's because I accidentally copied the Z. Make sure you don't add that Z offset, just the X and the Y, and there. Now he's sitting properly. In fact, I think that let me see. I'm gonna actually copy this, zero it out. I'm actually gonna add that to the pistol. There we go. Now everything's in the proper position because this is offset by 2.8 in there, but you don't actually have to do that. I did it because that's how I made it for the animation inside of here. In fact, that was probably a bad idea for me to do it like that. But I mean, I don't really know how else to handle that. It means that you would have to make sure that it always has this offset from the ground. Otherwise, it would cause problems. Um, Now, because this has physics, whenever physics is enabled, it'll be relatively in this same position, except it'll be flat across against the ground. So it looks like there would be a small error there. So that was my fault. Whenever I was making this animation, I kind of created that error there on accident. So I'm just going to roll with it and maintain the same offset and everything inside of here. Okay, so now we've completely set this up inside of here. Now we can start actually handling this outside of here. Remember, if you use the character settings in here, then okay. So yeah, like I was saying before, that was a bug that was causing it to do that. This is actually how it should look. So if yours does that, you can disable this, reset it, and then enable it back, and then reset it again. So yeah, so now anyway, you'll see that he comes over here and he picks it up. Now we could probably actually have it attached at some point inside of here. I might have to look into that. I haven't actually messed with the attachment parameters or the IK target parameters. I'll look into that and I'll consider doing a video on that at a later date where we cover that stuff. So anyway, that's the setup. So there's one thing that you need to be aware of. I'm going to go ahead and pull this I'm going to go ahead and pull some of these out here. I'm just going to pull one of those out. And I actually think I only need, I need a 90 on this, or maybe negative 90, and then a 90 on this. Let's see. No. Yeah, like that. So that's basically how we need it. We just need it to be rotated 90 like that. And now I can put a 2.08 here offset, which I believe is basically what we had over here. Or we could just copy that, but we don't need it to be that accurate. 2.08. So anyway, so I'm just going to actually leave it like that for the purpose, just to demonstrate that it doesn't actually matter its orientation in the world because of the contextual animation scene. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the prerequisite. So for this to actually work, for us to actually be able to perform a contextual animation scene like query and stuff like that, and make use of it, we need to actually add a contextual animation scene to the actor. And actually, what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to add it under my master, since all my items will probably eventually be using them. And then over here, I'm going to set this to be the one that I made for this pistol. Now, and not in this one, but in the future, whenever we do more advanced contextual animation scene setups, we'll actually also need a contextual animation scene actor for the character. And that's for actually starting the scene, joining the scene, stuff like that, which I'm not actually going to cover in this video because right now I'm just showing you. There's actually multiple use cases for contextual animation scenes, and you don't necessarily have to use them um, in one particular way. There's multiple different ways you can use them, and this is a good intro, I believe, to it. Now, on the character itself, you don't actually need to fill out the scene asset. That scene asset only needs to be filled out on the item that is the primary role, that fulfills the primary role within the contextual animation scene. That's the one that needs to be assigned to this contextual animation scene, which is why I only assigned it to this pistol. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my event graph and I'm just going to set this up on my event graph. So I want to create actually I want to create a hotkey here. I'm going to say keyboard, and you'll see these. I'm just going to press one and I'm press this little keyboard icon, and I'm just going to press G on here. I do not think I've assigned G to anything, so it should be safe. Now you could go and set up an input mapping action, an input action mapping if you want, but I'm not going to do that. So let's see. Let me just close all of those, and I'm going to open up this one in a new tab. And I'm going to go to item handling. And so this interactable item ref is actually how I interact with things in my project. Some people don't like the way that I handled that, but I just handled it for simplicity's sake this way. So what I'm going to do is this is the actual held object master, which was why I put that on the held object master, also because all my items are going to be using it. So I'm going to search for contextual anim scene. Scroll down to the bottom. I'm going to get a contextual anim scene actor. I probably could have named it something else like CAS actor. I could have named it something like that. It would have been easier to search for, but anyway. So I'm going to get the scene asset from this, and I'm actually going to store this as a variable. And I'm going to call it CAS scene asset. I want to make sure this is valid. And give me just 1 second. I'll be right back.